Chapter 1 of Book 6 of Topics by Aristotle, translated by Octavius Owen. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Jeffrey Edwards. Chapter 1 on places connected with definition. There are 5 parts of the discussion of definition. For the latter is reprehended, because it is not altogether true to assert that the sentence is predicated of what the name is, since it is necessary that the definition of man should be verified of every man, or because, when there is a genus, it does not place the thing defined in the genus, or not in its appropriate genus. For it is necessary that the person defining, placing the thing defined in genus, should add the differences, since of things in the definition, genus especially seems to signify the substance of the thing defined, or because the sentence is not proper, since it is necessary that definition should be proper, as was before observed, or if, though it has affected all the things stated, it does not define, nor state what the nature is of the thing defined. The remainder is, besides what we have mentioned, if it is defined indeed, but not defined well. Whether then the sentence also is not verified of what the name is, must be observed from places belonging to accident, since there also the whole consideration is, whether it is true or not true. For when we show by discussion that accident is inherent, we say that it is true, but when that it is not inherent, we call it untrue. Whether, again, the assigned definition is not placed in its proper genus, or is not proper, must be observed from places spoken about genus and property. It remains then to declare how we must institute an inquiry, whether a thing is not defined, or whether it is not rightly defined. First, indeed, then, we must see whether it is not rightly defined, since it is easier to do anything merely than to do it well. Now, it is clear that an error is more frequent about this, because it is more difficult, so that reasoning about this is easier than about that. Of the question of defining not rightly, there are 2 parts. 1. Whether obscurity is employed in the interpretation, since it is necessary that the person defining should make use of the clearest possible interpretation, as definition is assigned for the sake of knowledge, and the other, whether he has stated the definition more extensively than is requisite, as everything added in the definition is superfluous. Again, each of the above named is divided into many parts. Chapter 2 of places relative to defining rightly. One place, then, belonging to the obscure is, if what is stated is equivocal with anything, as that generation is a leading to substance, and that health is the harmony of hot and cold. For the words leading and harmony are equivocal, therefore it is doubtful which of the things signified by what is multifariously predicated a person wishes to assert. In like manner also, if, when the thing defined is multifariously predicated, a person expresses himself without distinction, as it will be dubious of what he has given the definition, and it is possible to cavil, as if the definition were not adapted to everything of which he has given the definition. Now, such a thing it is especially possible to do when there is latent equivocation, and also it is possible when a person has distinguished in how many ways what is assigned in the definition is predicated, to form a syllogism. For if it is not sufficiently stated in any mode, it is clear that it has not been defined according to that mode. Another place is, if it is spoken metaphorically, for instance, that science is that which cannot fall, or that the earth is a nurse, or that temperance is symphony, as everything enunciated metaphorically is obscure. it is also possible for him who uses a metaphor to cavil that he has spoken rightly, for the given definition will not suit, e.g. in the case of temperance, since all symphony is in sounds. Besides, if symphony be the genus of temperance, the same thing will be in two genera not containing each other, since neither does symphony contain virtue, nor virtue symphony. Moreover, the definition is obscure, if established names are not used, as Plato calls the eye that which is shaded by the eyebrows, or a spider a feeder on putrescence, or the marrow bone begetter, since whatever is unusual is obscure. Some things, however, are asserted neither equivocally, nor metaphorically, nor properly, for instance, law defined as a measure, or an image of things naturally just. Such things, indeed, are worse than metaphor, for metaphor in some way makes known what is signified on account of similitude, as all who use metaphors do so according to a certain similitude, but this kind of thing does not make known, as neither is there any similitude according to which law is a measure or an image, nor is it accustomed to be predicated properly. Wherefore, if a person says that law is properly a measure or an image, he speaks falsely. For an image is that the generation of which is by imitation, but this does not exist in law. But if it is improperly, it is clear that he speaks obscurely, and worse than anything spoken metaphorically. Again, it is reprehended if from what is stated the definition of the contrary is not evident, since they who well define signify also the contraries besides, or if it is not of itself evident of what the definition is spoken. But such cases, like ancient pictures, cannot be known, what each is, without a superscription. Chapter 3. Of Superfluity in Definition. If then definition be obscure, we must examine from such places as these. But if it has been stated excessively, we must first see whether anything is employed which is present with all things, or simply with beings, or with those which are under the same genus with the thing defined, since it must inevitably happen that this will be asserted in excess, for it is requisite to separate genus from other things, but difference from something of those in the same genus. Wherefore, what is present with all things is simply separated from nothing, but what is present with all under the same genus is not separated from those in the same genus, so that an addition of this kind is vain. Or we must observe whether what is added be proper, but this being taken away, the remaining definition is proper, and demonstrates substance, e.g. in the definition of man, receptive of science is superfluously added, since this being taken away, the remaining definition is appropriate, and manifests the substance. In a word, everything is superfluous, which, when taken away, the remainder causes the thing defined to be manifest. Such indeed is the definition of the soul, if it be number moving itself, for that which itself moves itself is soul, as Plato has defined it, or is what has been mentioned property indeed, yet does not manifest essence when number is taken away. In what way then the thing is hard to explain, but we must use this place in all such things as may be expedient. For instance, that the definition of phlegm is the first unconcocted moisture from food, for there is one first, not many, so that the addition of unconcocted is superfluous, since when this is taken away, what remains will be the proper definition, since it is impossible that this and something else should be the first moisture arising from food, Or shall we say that phlegm is not simply the first thing from food, but the first of things unconcocted, so that unconcocted must be added? For if it is stated in that way, the definition will not be true, since it is not the first of all things. Moreover, we must examine whether some one of the things in the definition is not present with all those under the same species, since such is defined worse than they do who use that which is present with all substances. For in that way the remainder would be the proper definition, and the whole would be proper, since in short, if anything true is added to property, the whole definition becomes proper. If, however, something of those in the definition is not present with all those under the same species, it is impossible that the whole definition should be proper, since it will not be reciprocally predicated of the thing, e.g. an animal pedestrian biped of 4 cubits, for such a definition is not reciprocally predicated of the thing, from 4 cubits not being present with all those which are under the same species. Again, whether the same thing is frequently stated, as he who says that desire is the appetite of the pleasant, for all desire is of the pleasant, wherefore what is the same with desire will also be of the pleasant. The definition then of desire is the appetite of the pleasant, for there is no difference between saying desire or the appetite of the pleasant, so that each of these will belong to the pleasant. Or is it that this is not at all absurd? For man also is a biped, so that what is the same with man will also be biped, but an animal pedestrian biped is the same as man, so that animal pedestrian biped is biped. Nevertheless, no absurdity happens on this account, for biped is not predicated of pedestrian animal, for thus indeed biped would be twice predicated of the same thing, but biped is predicated about animal pedestrian biped, wherefore biped is predicated once only. In the same manner, in the case of desire, for to be of the pleasant is not predicated of appetite, but of the whole sentence, so that here also the predication is once. Still, that the same name should be twice pronounced does not belong to absurdity, but frequently to predicate the same about a certain thing, as when Xenocrates says that prudence is definitive and contemplative of beings, for the definitive is something contemplative, so that he twice says the same thing, again adding contemplative. They also do the same who say that refrigeration is a privation of natural heat, for all privation is of what exists naturally, so that to add naturally is superfluous, but it would have been sufficient to say privation of heat, since privation itself makes it known that it is spoken of what is naturally. Again, whether what is universally asserted adds also something particular, as if we defined equity the diminution of things profitable and just, for the just is something profitable, wherefore it is contained in the profitable, so that just is superfluous, and speaking of the universal, the partial is added. Also, if some one should define medicine to be the science of things healthful, for animal and man, or law to be the image of things naturally beautiful and just, for the just is something beautiful, so that he would say the same thing frequently. Chapter 4. As to whether the definition contains what a thing is. Whether, therefore, a thing be defined well or ill must be examined through these and similar places, but whether a person has asserted and defined what a thing is or not, from the following. First, if he has not made the definition through things prior and more known. For since definition is assigned for the sake of knowing what is said, but we know not from things casual, but from what are prior and more known, as in demonstrations, for thus all doctrine and discipline subsists, it is clear that he who does not define through such things as these does not define rightly. But if not, there will be many definitions of the same thing, since it is evident that whoever defines through things prior and more known defines in a better manner, so that both definitions would be of the same thing. This, however, does not seem so, as to each being to be what it is one thing, so that if there should be many definitions of the same thing, there will be the same essence of the thing defined, as is manifested by each of the definitions. These essences, however, are not the same, since the definitions are different, wherefore he has evidently not defined who does not define through things prior and more known. To assume then that a definition is not framed through things more known is possible in two ways, either if it is simply from things more unknown, or from those which are more unknown to us, for in both ways it is possible. Simply then, the prior is more known than the posterior, as a point than a line, and a line than a superficies, and a superficies than a solid, as also unity than number, for it is prior to, and the principle of, all number. Likewise, a letter than a syllable. Nevertheless, to us the reverse sometimes happens, since a solid falls under sense rather than a superficies, but a superficies more than a line, and a line more than a point, for the multitude know these things in a greater degree, since some things it is possible for any casual intellect to discern, but others belong to an intellect accurate and transcendent. Simply then, it is better to aim at the knowledge of things posterior through such as are prior, for a thing of this kind is more scientific. Still, by those who are incapable of knowing through things of this kind, it is perhaps necessary to frame the definition through things known to them. Now, of such definitions are those of a point, and of a line, and of a superficies, for all manifest things prior, through such as are posterior, for they say that one is the boundary of a line, the other of a superficies, and the other of a solid. Still, we must not be unmindful that those who define thus cannot denote what the nature is of the thing defined, unless the same thing should happen both to be more known to us and simply to be more known, since he who well defines must necessarily do so, through the genus and the differences. But these are of the number of things more known simply than, and prior to, species. For genus and difference co-subvert species, so that these are prior to species. They are also more known, for if species is known, it is necessary that genus also and difference should be known, as he who knows man knows both animal and pedestrian. But when genus or difference is known, it is not necessary that species also should be known, wherefore species is more unknown. Besides, to those who really call things of this kind definitions, which consist of what are known to everyone, it will happen to say that there are many definitions of the same thing, since some things are more known to some persons, and not the same to all, so that there would be a different definition to be given to each person, if it were necessary that definition should be framed from things more known to each severally. Further, to the same persons at a certain time, certain things are more known, at first indeed sensibles, but the reverse when they become more accurate, so that neither would the same definition have to be given to the same person by those who say that a definition must be given through things more known to each. Clearly, then, we must not define through such things, but through those that are simply more known, since thus only would one and the same definition be always produced. Perhaps, indeed, what is simply known is not that which is known to all, but that which is known to those who have their intellect well disposed, just as what is simply wholesome is that which is so, to those whose bodies are in a good state. Hence it is necessary accurately to explain each of these, and to use them in discussion as may be expedient. But most confessedly is it possible to subvert definition, if it be neither framed from things simply more known, nor from those which are so to us. One mode then of proving that it is not through things more known, is when the prior is manifested through the posterior, as we observed before. Another, if the definition of what is at rest and definite is assigned to us through the indefinite and through what is in motion, since the permanent and definite are prior to the indefinite and to what is in motion. The modes indeed of showing a definition to be not from things prior are three. First, if the opposite is defined through the opposite, as good through evil, for opposites are naturally simultaneous. Still, to some there seems to be the same science of both, so that the one is not more known than the other. Nevertheless, we must bear in mind that some things perhaps it is impossible to define otherwise, as the double without the half, and whatever things are enunciated relatively per se. For in all these there is the same essence, from their having relation in a certain respect, so that it is impossible to know the one without the other. Wherefore, in the definition of the one, the other must of necessity be comprehended. All such things, then, it is necessary to know, and to employ them as may appear useful. Another place is, if in the definition the thing defined is used, but this is latent, when a person does not employ the very name of the thing defined, as if he should define the sun to be a star, apparent by day, for using day he uses sun. In order to detect such, we must take the definition instead of the name, as the day is the motion of the sun above the earth, for it is clear that he who speaks of the motion of the sun above the earth mentions the sun, so that he who uses day uses sun. Again, if what is in an opposite division is defined by what is in an opposite one, as the odd to be what is greater than the even by unity, for things oppositely divided from the same genus are naturally simultaneous, but the odd and even are divided oppositely, since both are differences of number. Similarly also, if the superior is defined through the inferior, as that the even number is what may be divided into two parts, or that good is the habit of virtue, for the expression, quote, into two parts, close quote, is assumed from two, which is an even number. Virtue also is a certain good, so that these are under those. Besides, it is necessary that whoever uses the inferior should use also the thing defined itself, for both he who uses virtue uses good, since virtue is a certain good, and likewise also he who uses, quote, in two parts, close quote, uses the even, because a division into two parts signifies to be divided into two, but two is an even number. End of chapter 4 of book 6. Recording in memory of Mitchell Edwards.